Let's talk about Adobe Photoshop brushes. Now, brushes serve a lot of purposes in this program. The program's always had brushes, obviously, but they've really matured and evolved. For example, we paint with brushes. We all know that. We can pick up a color over here, and that's our painting color, and then we can have fun all day long painting. I think most of us have figured that one out. But brushes, again, like I've said, have evolved. There are some very new features. For example, you now have what are called erodible brushes. And what that means is if you're working with like a charcoal pencil, it will literally erode as if you're working in the real three-dimensional world on real media. And as you use it, it gets shorter and shorter. Interesting feature. Adobe is trying to make this program not just for Photoshop, I think, but also for artists. Now, I grew up in the world of watercolors and oils, and I did a lot of stuff, and I do like the fact that they are doing that. But to me, Photoshop is still a program where I'm using brushes to control photography and manipulate things. Remember, brushes are more than paint. They control things like our healing brush tools over here. They control our eraser. They control the clone stamp tool, the sponge tool, dodge tool, the burn tool. All those tools are controlled by Photoshop's brushes. So not just painting, but using brushes with unique shapes can help us get the job done. Let's look at some of the shortcuts that we have in this first lesson. Let's come over here first and pick up our paintbrush tool. So, I'm just kind of happily painting away. And I decide I want a different size brush. Now, the shortcut for that that's been there forever is if we come over here and we press the left and right bracket keys, we can change the size of that brush. If we want to change the hardness, because right now it's a soft edge, same two keys, but hold the shift key down while you're doing that, and you can change the hardness of the brush. Right goes harder, left goes softer, and we can get a harsher edge if that's what we're looking for. That's the shortcut. Now, the one that's new to 6 is kind of cool. Hold down while you've got a brush selected. Hold down the Alt key and the Control key, and drag left and right and watch what happens. Dragging left and right allows me to change the size or the diameter of the brush, but that's not all. If I hold down the Alt key and I hold down the Control key again and go up and down, it will allow me to change the hardness of the brush. Up, down, left, and right. Now, if you go into, let's go into Photoshop. If you go into Preferences and go into the General Preferences. Now, if you're in Windows, go to the word Edit. They're the same preferences, they're just in a different place. But in General Preferences, one of the preferences that you have is very round brush hardness based on HUD, heads-up display, vertical movement. If you turn that off, going up and down changes the opacity of the brush as opposed to its softness or hardness, and that's up to you. Let's get out of here. So we've got a lot of control over this one single brush that we are working with. Make it bigger, make it smaller, make the edges more feathered, or make them more distinct or harder. Yeah, that's been there for a long time, but we have new ways to get to them. But what if we want a different brush? What do? Well, there's actually several ways that we can accomplish that. If you right-click your mouse right where you are, you will get the brush presets, and you can choose any brush that you want. There's quite a few fun ones in here. We can change the size and the hardness right down here. Say, for example, we go into leaves right here. Now we'll look at how we do those and explore that and make our own brushes. But yeah, they're kind of fun to work with. If we come over here, we can get the same brushes over there. Right up here, you click that button, you got them right here. Here's a leaf, if you want to draw leaves. If you don't want to do it this way, you can go up to the word Window on the pull-down menu and go down to Brush Presets right here. And I've already got them open here, but there they are. Same things. All these new brushes that we have. Lots of cool ones. Let me show you one more that's kind of fun. This one right here, I believe it is. Let me make that smaller. I'll use my left bracket key. These brushes are actually very easy to make if you want to. So you have all this control. Let's look at one more set of options before we move out of this lesson. First off, let me right-click my mouse and get something a little bit more urbane in terms of a brush, something like that. Okay, if we come up here, let me go ahead and get rid of that stuff. We do have an option here for blending mode. Now, we discussed blending modes on brushes when we talked about the blending modes in the blending mode chapter. So don't forget, you have the ability to change the characteristics of the brush and blend colors that are there using blending modes. You have an option here for opacity. I think most people figured out what that one is, but opacity, here's 100%. If we go in here, let's take that down to like about 10 or so. Now the color isn't lighter. The color is only 10%. If there was something behind there, 90% of what would be back there would be coming through. Let's take opacity back to 100%. These options right here, this one and these two, concern themselves more with a drawing tablet, so we're going to skip those for the moment. We have another one called flow. Now let's come over here and change flow to say, 10% again. If I then come down here and begin painting, it looks about the same as when I did opacity, but here's the difference. Let's take opacity down to 10 too. I'll just type the number in since it takes me forever. And let's take flow for a second back to 100%. In opacity, looks exactly the same, but the thing of it is, as long as I've got my mouse held down, it's not going to go any more than 10%. If I let go of the mouse and go again, it's going to add another 10%. That's how opacity works. Now let's take opacity to 100%, and let's take flow to 10. Back down here again. Now watch. As I move, it keeps adding. That's the difference between flow and opacity. Opacity, if you've got the mouse held down, won't do more than 10%. Flow is almost like an airbrush. The more you go over the area, the darker it's going to get as you continue to pass back and forth. And of course, if these are both set to 100%, you're going to get 100% color. Well, there you go, at least for the beginning. Kind of brushes 101. Lots of new features, lots of fun brushes to work with. On to the next.